on this episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists.
You can get so excited to be able to collaborate with a company that you sometimes you can lose track or lose sight of your personal brand, and we all have one. And I think that, the hygiene community, they can see that pretty clearly. Like, is this actually Bethany? Like, is this Bethany talking? Or is this X company speaking through Bethany? I started writing back in 2021, and I really just took off with it right away to where I was submitting maybe a couple of articles a month. And over time, things just started to organically change for me, where that's where companies started approaching me in the beginning saying, hey, will you write this product review article? And I'm like, yes. And then over time, companies started asking, hey, would you be interested in speaking for us?
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists. Happy Saturday, or whichever day you're listening to this. This is your bonus episode, or one of your bonus episodes for this month, and it's brought to you in part by PacDent. In this episode, we welcome Bethany Montoya to talk about career development and professional development, which is a huge part of what PacDent supports for the RDH. From what I've seen over the last several years, PacDent has been one of the leading companies supporting hygienists kind of in all of the arenas. They provide the speakers for great CE. At the conferences, they're always supporting networking and professional development events. They're constantly rewarding hygienists in the profession by reinvesting whatever profits they make back into serving and helping us, which I really appreciate about them. I can't say enough great things about them. I also can't say enough great things about Bethany Montoya. You're all in for a really big treat right now. You're going to love this episode, so sit back, relax, and here is the interview with Bethany.
A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome, everyone, into the interview portion of this special podcast chat. I'm really excited. By the way, I don't know if I've ever started saying that. By the way, we call these podcast chats, by the way, everyone, these bonus episodes that we do. I was just on a bunch of calls today. Bethany, you work at the same company I do. You know how those calls are. We start having our industry talk, and then all of a sudden that leads over to the podcast. So listeners, I'm so sorry, but welcome to this bonus episode. I have Bethany Montoya on with me. I am really excited about this. We have some really good things that we have planned for you all. This is, as an acknowledgement, this is sponsored by PacDent. But I think one of the things I like about PacDent is you go to the conferences, they sponsor all the cool stuff that the hygienists like. They sponsor the KOLs, and they don't say, hey, this is exactly what you have to talk about. Here's your 15 talking points and your 10-minute spiel. And it just ends up being product placement, We are going to talk about some of their products a little bit later on in the episode, but really they're empowering you and us to have these conversations as real hygienists trying to solve the world's problems. So I'm very, very thankful for them. And I know you've had a really great relationship with them this whole time.
Yeah, I really have. Just exactly what you said, Andrew. I just have felt in the time that I have worked with PacDent that they are just very supportive of the hygiene community, and their goal is not to be front and center of all the events that they help to support. They really just want to let the information shine through and the message that, the speaker or whatever has. So I appreciate that from them as well.
Well, let's get right into this kind of professional development thing, because it is a little bit tangential to what you just said. So I think a lot of companies that are sponsoring KOLs or key opinion leaders and maybe some industry experts, they kind of sometimes lose that line of thought that you were saying of you have to be authentic, you have to have a real relationship, you really have to partner with them. But conversely though, and I know we're probably jumping 8 steps ahead, but conversely though, if you are a KOL, if you're looking at maybe becoming a writer or speaker or any of these different things, you also have to be authentically you with your partnerships with the companies. So I was hoping that we could kind of start this off a little bit spicy and say, look, what, obviously not personal experiences, I don't want you to expose yourself, but what have you seen in the industry where maybe a KOL has kind of taken the wrong path with their partnerships with leaders in industries?
Yeah. Well, I think that, working as a key opinion leader can be much like even a clinical job where you take on a role with a practice. And for a lot of us, we're just so excited to have a position, to have a practice say yes to us, that we might not do all of the homework in finding out, like, what is this practice even about? Like, do they have a vision? Am I actually aligned with this practice? And then you might notice several months or even years down the road that maybe you aren't so aligned with them. And so I think a lot of times that can happen in the KOL realm as well, where, you can get so excited to be able to collaborate with a company that you sometimes you can lose track or lose sight of your personal brand. And we all have one. And I think that, the hygiene community, they can see that pretty clearly. Like, is this actually Bethany? Like, is this Bethany talking? Or is this X company speaking through Bethany? And so I think it's really important to maintain that balance between the message from the company you're representing and your personal message, and make it authentic and genuine. So it's kind of a balancing act, and it really does make you appreciate the companies that you do get to partner with that really see your value as an individual and see what you're about, support what you're about as far as your personal brand goes. So that's super important.
To the opposite side of that is sometimes, you have to know who you are, as you have to know what your brand is, right? But just like you said, sometimes we're there a little bit too early in our career. Like, we kind of accidentally fell into something, or, the podcast was one of those things. Like, it was never supposed to be a thing. I don't think when I started the podcast, I should have been giving really anyone any advice of what products or things to use, because I hadn't tried them all yet, right? I've been a practicing clinician for several years, but I'm interviewing people like you. Like, you guys are the experts telling us the things. And so I think that sometimes it's hard when you're brand new and you kind of make a little bit of a name for yourself, and then all of a sudden you're saying that, like, okay, draw the line in the sand. This is the company that you have to represent. So could you talk a little bit about, finding out who you are and, like, what is your personal brand, and how do you, like, reconcile some of that?
Yeah. So my story goes back a few years. I started off as like just any other hygienist. I graduated from hygiene school in 2012. And for the first, almost 10 years of clinical practice, I had a very ordinary experience working in patient care. But like a lot of people, and even a lot of, companies, my world got flipped upside down during the COVID pandemic. And I unexpectedly got fired from a position that I never saw that coming. There were a lot of things that kind of played into it. It happened during COVID, but it wasn't really because of COVID, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It was more of just an opportunity. And it really became a pivotal point in my life where I realized you can invest so much into your work as a clinician and invest so much into the patient care that you provide and the practice that you work for. But at the end of the day, that can all be taken away from you. And so in coming to terms with that for myself, I really started to wonder, like, what I even wanted out of my career, like, and did I want to continue feeling that way, that like everything could change at the drop of the hat. And so I wanted a little more autonomy and control over my career. And I started to do that by branching out with published writing. I actually sent kind of an anonymous private message to a hygienist that I knew on Facebook, Sarah Lawrence. I didn't know her personally at the time. I just connected with her through happenstance, but I was watching her career progress because she was like me. She lost her job during the pandemic, and I was just watching her kind of branch outside of clinical hygiene, and I saw her doing a lot of work with a company that they're based in leadership and things. And those were kind of things that I admired. So I reached out to her and I'm like, hi, Sarah, I know you don't know who I am, but my name's Bethany, and like, this is what I'm about. This is what I'm going through right now. Do you have any advice for me? And so she was kind enough to take a call with me, and she was like, Bethany, you wrote me the longest message. And it showed me that you're a good writer. And I wondered if you had ever considered writing before. And I was like, yeah, kind of, a little bit. And she's like, well, have you actually done it though? Like, have you been published before? And I was like, no. And she asked, why not? And I said, well, I don't think that I have an audience. I don't think that there are people that would care to read what I would have to share. And she's like, that's not true. And so she challenged me to consider it. And I am easily persuaded. And so as soon as we got off the phone, I grabbed a notebook, I grabbed a pen, and I just started writing out like topics that I would want to write about. And I think probably by the end of that week, I had my first article written. I wrote an article about my experience getting fired, and I submitted it to RDH magazine, and it was received really well. I remember when I had my very first phone call with Jackie Sanders, she had told me, this is a great article. I really like it. I really like the heart behind it. We're going to put it in our newsletters right now. But if you can, start to write other pieces that are more research-based, I'd love to get it in the magazine. And so I did that. I started focusing on research-based pieces. And the journey just kind of started for me then. And when I was really thinking about my personal brand and the kinds of topics and themes that I wanted to focus on, I kept coming back to this human theme, like something about the word human, where a lot of my, I don't want to say issues, but like the situations that I had found myself in a lot in practicing as a clinical hygienist, I felt like maybe a lot of the people that I worked with and worked for weren't really thinking so much about the human aspect that ties us all together and the human quality of our patients. We kind of forget about all that stuff. We're there to do a job, and we're there to see a patient and finish with them and see the next patient and the next patient and the next patient. And so I really wanted a lot of my work to kind of revolve around like, hey, I know we're all here doing a job, but we're working with people. We're working with people on our teams. We're serving people in our exam chairs. And those are important pieces that we need to remember if we want to be successful in the work that we're doing. And so that's kind of the foundation that I built everything off of, where a lot of the pieces that I've written for different publications, they do have a deep human theme to them. And I created a social media account called Human RDH, and that is very much a deep theme in the content that I provide. And even the lectures that I provide now, when I speak, they're very human themes. I talk about thought science for dental professionals and how the way that we think and our attitudes actually can change our genetic expression and change our overall health and career development and all those things. So that's in a short form, that's kind of the story behind my personal brand. And so I was really excited when I started putting myself out there, and I had these really great companies reach out to me, and they're like, hey, we really like what you're doing. We really like what you're about. How can we support you more? How can we partner with you? And those are the most meaningful relationships to have.
It's really interesting that you said, that it took for, first of all, your identity, like who you are, your personal brand wasn't, when you didn't identify it yet when you got fired. You didn't identify it when you were working for somebody else, when you were being the kind of robotic, see the patient, see the next patient, see the next patient. It was something that you were discovering kind of along the way. And then well afterwards, you were almost put in a situation where you almost had to find that. And so for someone else trying to replicate what you were able to do, are there Like, are there tools, resources, are there things out there? Like, how do they have that self-reflection of like, who am I? And what do I identify with? And how do I create this personal brand?
Yeah. I think for me, I think a lot of that started once I really started to focus on like my personal growth and my personal development. I started reading a lot of like leadership books and self-improvement books, things like that. Learning about like, I almost feel like we kind of see this stuff as being cliche now, but like emotional intelligence and things like that. Like I know emotional intelligence was trending for the longest time, and I know it's still out there, but learning about those things for me was part of my journey to realizing like what's really important in connecting with the people that we work with and things like that. I've written articles about a concept that I came up with called intuitive patient care. And it's based on those kind of foundations too, like, you know, kind of going the extra mile beyond just being empathetic with our patients, but really being in tune with body language and the way that they're speaking to us, and really just having that human experience with our patient while they happen to be in our hygiene chair. Like that connection that we have with them is when the real impact is made between the clinician and the patient. And for me personally, I didn't realize that I was focusing on that stuff when I was really heavy into clinical practice. Like I still practice with patients, but when I was working full-time clinically, I had like these connections with my patients, and I didn't really realize like what I was doing there, but I just noticed that when I would be monitoring my metrics and things, I tended to have really high treatment acceptance rates. I happen to have really high reappointment rates. I happen to have really high periodiagnosis and acceptance rates. And I remember my employers would come up to me and they're like, Bethany, we love what we see. What are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I just try to like talk to my patients. I try to tell them like everything that I know. I try to educate them, and they usually just say yes. Like I didn't know that there was anything more to it. And now looking back, I can see that I've just always been drawn to like that human connection with the people that I work with. And I think that's just always been a driver. And so now that I'm aware of it, I've just been working really hard to raise awareness around that. And so to kind of go back to your question, I would say if somebody's wanting to learn more about how they can like work on their relationship skills and gain more of an intuition with their patients, or, you know, be aware of that intuition, studying things like emotional intelligence is a really great start. Listening to podcasts and things that talk about, you know, interacting with people and things that inspire you, those are helpful too. You can always check out some of my articles too that talk about intuitive patient care, but that would give somebody a good taste of how they can elevate their patient care in that way.
I think one of the cool things that happens along this like professional development journey that a lot of us are on is that we had the Sarahs, the Jackies, all the different people in our lives helping us out. But now we're in positions where we can help other people out as well. So I was wondering if you could maybe like talk to a little bit about, you know, like what you're trying to do now to help people become better writers, or help them kind of just develop a little bit more along their professional path, no matter what that path might look like.
Yeah, writing really changed everything for me. I started writing back in 2021, and I really just like took off with it right away to where I was submitting maybe a couple of articles a month. And over time, things just started to organically change for me, where that's where companies started approaching me in the beginning saying, hey, will you write this product review article? And I'm like, yes. And then over time, you know, companies started asking, hey, would you be interested in speaking for us? And so I tried that out and loved that too. And so I have just experienced firsthand not only the fulfillment that comes with writing, but also the opportunities that can grow from that. And so I started providing writing coaching and mentorship to anyone who wants it, maybe a little over a year ago. And then part of me continuing to write for RDH magazine is the company that oversees that publication. They approached me and asked if I would want to take on an editorial director with Dentistry IQ's daily newsletter, which is called Clinical Insights. And I just help to oversee the clinical information that goes into that newsletter, but it's provided me with another platform to be able to help dental professionals who want to get published. I actually have a place where I can help them publish their work. And so it's kind of become full circle for me, where now I'm not just providing people with a roadmap on how to get published. I can actually help see them through the entire journey and help them get published. So that's brought a lot of meaning to the work that I do. And just in the couple of years that I've had that position, I've been able to help dozens of hygienists and dentists and assistants, lab professionals get published. And that's been awesome.
That's always fun to see them, kind of get to that next level. And then they're so happy. They feel very fulfilled and satisfied. Like, 'cause there's always like that one little thing that's missing. And like, often that's it,
Yeah.
What are like the topics? So this is an issue that I always have, like, as we're doing the podcast stuff is, oh my gosh, what do people want to listen to anymore? We send out surveys once a year, but that's not, it almost feels like the times, and because of social media, like, things change so quickly. So what have you seen lately have been like the hot topics that just doesn't go away?
I've seen a lot of interest with myofunctional therapy. That has probably been one of the top ones. Yes. And I know you said that y'all are working on a series about that right now, which is awesome. I don't see myofunctional therapy ever going out of style at this point. Like, people are so into it, and it's such a great area of work for people. So I've also seen a lot of interest in infection control, especially, post-COVID. That has been another thing that I don't think will ever go out of style at this point.
Yeah.
I get a lot of interest, people wanting to learn about dental sleep medicine, because that's actually the type of clinical work that I do now. I work for a dental sleep medicine practice where we don't provide any general dentistry. I don't do any traditional hygiene there. And so I've had a lot of people reach out to me wanting to know how they can get into that field and start that journey for themselves. And so that's been a hot topic that I've seen. Those are just a few.
You know what, though? So as I was taking and stealing your ideas, I'm like, okay, that's going to be May. May is going to be sleep medicine or sleep dentistry, and I'll see what's going on.
Yeah.
You brought up, the post-pandemic, kind of things that have changed. And one of the things with like infection control is it just ramped up so quick. Like, it was there before, right? I worked for a company that did it, probably among the best companies as far as like an organizational level that I've ever seen. With the right people in place, they paid money for like senior leadership, to be able to have all this instruction across all the offices. But as I was, temping around, doing, working in private practice, doing all that stuff, that was unique. That was rare at that time. And things have kind of come along, I would say slowly at first, and then all of a sudden, like maybe 2021, boom, it's like the huge explosion. And so of all the companies that you work for, or work with, Pacton obviously has thought about that as well. Do you want to go into some of the things that they've thought about as far as, infection control goes?
Yeah, they've come up with some really fantastic hygiene products that I immediately gravitated toward when I started doing some work with them. So they've taken that problem that we see in dental hygiene and just dentistry in general, where we're exposed to a lot of pathogens. And so when we were knee deep into COVID, like, we're wearing the N95 and all of the layers of PPE, and we're trying all of these like crazy contraptions with evacuation systems and air filtration and all this stuff. But Pacton has come up with some simpler solutions for hygienists, and they've been able to incorporate these features into a lot of their hygiene products. So it's got a really strong kind of anti-mess, anti-splatter theme that's going to protect hygienists from getting exposed to the fluids and particles that can be thrown their way while they're doing polishing. And so they created the ProMate CL, it's a cordless hygiene handpiece that was kind of like one of their bigger products that they released a few years ago. I really like the handpiece because aside from how it is able to help with infection control, it's got like removable sheaths that you're able to take off and autoclave in between patients. And I'll be honest, a lot of the private practices that I've worked in over the years, that's been a huge shortfall where most of the practices I worked in used corded handpieces and they weren't autoclaved in between patients. You wipe it down.
Hold on. We have to talk about this for a second because I don't think that these young people listening understand what it's like to go into these practices that have been around for 25, 30 years and literally it's fused to the air-driven part of it. Like you can't undo it because they probably have been wiping it down. It's probably all just like the gunked up stuff. But like, I'm not kidding you. That has happened to me probably no less than 5 offices where they're like, oh, well, we never removed the motor. We're like, I'm sorry, you don't want now? Sorry, like,
right.
Go back. How is that a thing? I don't think that I couldn't imagine any longer like a time that cordless handpieces didn't exist.
I know. And it's been such a revolutionary thing, honestly, because aside from the convenience that they provide, like they're so much lighter and they're so much quieter. And so I love that for the patient experience. You know, I feel like we have grown like this awareness of, especially a lot of our patients that maybe have some sensory disorders, like things like a handpiece can be really triggering for them and for anyone really. But using a cordless handpiece, the motor is so much quieter, and so I love that. But yeah,
you know what?
Just being able to...
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
So it's like, you know, it's a weird thing though too, because in addition to all of the things you said, unbeknownst to all of us, it triggered that, holy crap, we need to start taking better care of ourselves too, because what is it doing to our ears, right? And so now you see all these other products, like it almost created a whole nother product line because there's all these like ear protective things that are now really important because we literally hear the difference in the next operatory over. Doctors doing their stuff still air driven. We're over here with our cordless handpieces, all like quiet and like not like going deaf slowly. So
yeah, no, it's true. Like I do feel like we just get exposed to just so many different hazards. So all of these little developments, you know, you think that they're small, but like a cordless handpiece is a huge change. And Pacdent, I really like theirs too, because you've got the option of using it with or without a foot pedal. And I also like that you can use any kind of Profi angle on that handpiece. You're not limited to a certain type or brand. So I love that. But aside from the handpiece, they've also put a lot of effort into designing what they call their anti-splatter Profi angle. So it's a rubber cup Profi angle that's got like a little fender around the rubber cup. And so it catches all of the fluids and Profi paste that usually splatters all across your lab jacket or your mask or even into your hair. And it prevents all that. I think their research shows that it's up to 100% effective in catching all that stuff. So that's great.
How ridiculous is it that it took so long, by the way? And no offense back then. It's not about you guys, but it's like as an industry, like we complain about all this disgustingness. And then finally someone's like, oh, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do this. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
Way too long.
Well, yes. Well, and I've experienced too, like over the years, I always wore all the PPE. Like I had, you know, the mask on my face. I had eyewear on. My patient always wore eyewear, but I've had a handful of incidents where I'd be polishing somebody's teeth and a piece of Profi paste would fly up under my glasses into my eye. And I've had that happen to patients too, where it went right under their glasses. So any extra measure that we can take to protect ourselves and our patients from that is great, especially when it's Profi paste, because I don't know if you've ever had that in your eye before. It hurts. It's so pretty.
I mean, yeah, especially the corkscrew, right? Well, let me ask this. We didn't clear this question with Pacdent. I think they're going to be all right with it, but you just never know. But I want your honest opinion for the listener, because it's cool. We're talking about, you know, their stuff, their products. I'm sure they're going to be happy with that. However, that's not enough. I don't feel like. I feel like we, as a instant gratification society. Like we don't really pay attention to like this part of the conversation. So what should like the listeners be doing maybe at a conference? Like what kind of conversation should they be having with Bacten or whoever else when they go up to like the booths?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind is to ask what kind of samples that you can get, because one thing I will say about Bacten is they're very generous with the samples that they provide. Like honestly, even if you're not at a trade show or an event, they even have a landing page on their website that you can go to and order samples for yourself anyways. But they're very generous with samples for their different types of prophy angles, their prophy paste. They've got a prophy paste that's also meant to prevent mess and splatter and all that stuff. But ask them for samples. And then I would say also ask them if they can demonstrate or demo those things for you, because they keep all that stuff at the booth, and it's great for you to just be able to get your hands on it and try it out yourself and see the difference.
That's a good point. It's like you're always like, hey, look, but don't touch, kind of a thing. But like, It's nice to have that hands-on experience, like if it's going to adapt to the way that you practice. Because I think we all just assume that it's all going to work the same. It just doesn't. It just really doesn't.
Right.
Man, this has been great, Bethany. Thank you so much for coming on. Listeners, I'm going to try and find I'll find the link for the samples. I'll put it in the show notes. So make sure you guys head over there. If someone wanted to reach out to you, Bethany, and ask you maybe follow-up questions or anything else, where can they find you?
They can either send me an email at bethanyrdh@outlook.com, or you can connect with me on my social media account. I'm mainly on Instagram. I'm on the other platforms too, but my handle is humanrdh.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.